Good morning. Would you like to open up, Vice Chair? Which one is the Vice Chair? I know Robert Preston was the chair. There you go. All right. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Oh, no, you don't have to take a vote on the open it up. And that's okay. And it's 10:02 a.m. Okay, my name is Clara Van Blargen. If you don't, some of you don't know, I'm the city clerk for the city of Madeira Beach. And we have Robin Gomez back there. He's the city manager. We welcome him this morning. He's our new city manager and we're proud of him. And then we have his executive assistant, Megan Powers, and our recreation director, Jay Hatch. And we have on the left at the end here, which is Sean Lilly. He's our new HR director. And we have our attorney for the Civil Service Commission. And that's Robert Estenfelter. All right, I'm getting better. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is ask all the new ones that haven't taken their oath yet to just raise your right hand and just repeat after me, and then we'll get started. And that's for Christina Lockhart Wells and Christine Ponte and Paul Tilka. All right. If you'll raise your right hand, then right after the meeting, I'll have you to sign your oath, okay? And when I say I, just repeat your name, and then I'll continue. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Florida, the Charter and the Code of Ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, and that I will faithfully discharge my duties as a member of the Civil Service Commission for the City of Madeira Beach to the best of my ability in the manner provided by law. All right. We have our last session of our minutes that were in your packet, which are the March the 3rd, 2021 Civil Service Commission meetings. I know you just in there. I just need to get those approved so that we can get them signed and into the book. Okay. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion carried 5-0, all ayes. Now, at this time, we're going to appoint annually, you're required to appoint your chair and your vice chair. So that's what we're doing today.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Jean Embler as the chair of the Civil Service Commission.
Have a second? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to appoint Jean Embler as the chair, and Paul Tilka seconded it. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion carried 5-0 on that one. And now it's the vice chair. Okay, second to Paul Tilka's motion to nominate, was that Judith? Judith? Is there a second? Okay, so the motion carried, the seconded by Jean, and all in favor, say aye. Any opposed, say nay. All in favors was 5-0. Okay, at this time, I'm gonna turn it over to the city manager, and he can explain how he would like you to proceed in reviewing the manual, and then you can set your calendar. And then, however he wants to do this part.
Good morning. Again, I'm Robin Gomez, Madeira Beach City Manager since December 20th. Pleased to meet all of you and thank you all very much for essentially volunteering to serve on the Civil Service Commission. It's much appreciated. You do have in your packet I'm going to call it it's a draft of the city's policies and procedures for all personnel matters. It's a little bit of a lengthy document, but what we're in the process or began the process is to review, edit, amend, modify how any specific components of it. Eventually, they would come back to you for approval at a subsequent meeting. So that's pretty much what we're looking to do with the draft. I believe it has been, I think, reviewed by legal or suggestions as to what would be the changes that would need to be made. But in that, so we're approaching the end of the process, and if there's anything else that you would like to add, I don't have anything specific at this point. It's really just kind of open for your thoughts and suggestions and ideas related to the manual.
Robin, welcome. We're glad to have you. And I know I'm putting you on the spot because you are brand new here, but I would like to get some clarity around the process. We last met March the 3rd. It's my understanding that this committee is a charter committee and we are supposed to meet quarterly. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So I guess I'm going to give you a couple of questions. And first of all, why have we not been brought together for almost a year? And secondly, I know at our last meeting, we welcomed the new HR director. And at our last meeting, it was decided to wait, let him get on board, and then we would get together. And we also, prior to that last meeting, submitted a lot of information. So I guess my question is, why haven't we met? Where are we? And what's going to be the process going forward?
Well, we will look to meet quarterly as the requirements have been. I can't speak for why there were no meetings prior to this meeting, but that would be our, go ahead.
Yes. Well, what happened was we ended up getting 3 people that had come off the board, which we did not have enough for a quorum. And also we were going through a change with city manager and all. And so they just decided to put that off because the city manager is heavily involved in the Civil Service Commission and all. And then your recommendations go to a workshop meeting to the board, BOC, and then they in turn direct the city manager to bring forward an ordinance adopting those. So it has been a process, and the notes that you all put together, and I remember the last conversation was, and the book got changed after that. So you're like starting fresh and brand new. Remember, it was rewritten when you, at your last meeting, and of course it was a surprise to some and to some all. So, but anyway, so you'll start over again and you'll go through it as if, as the city manager had mentioned, and you are to meet quarterly regularly, but while you're going through your handbook and all, you can meet as often as you think is necessary. But when you have nothing, pretty much, it's just regular every quarter to come together and check and see if the handbook is working and just different things. And I put the code section in your books and also provided the city charter, and it lays out your responsibilities for both. But we do apologize that there has not been any meetings, but we were in the transition of getting a new city manager, and we didn't have enough members to call a meeting because we had to have at least 3 for a quorum. But we appreciate you for wanting to serve, and now we have a full board and it's wonderful. We thank you.
And just for the new members' understanding, so the three that were, was it a retirement for the three that were off the board? So you only had two?
Yes.
Was that scheduled?
Yes,
Okay.
they decided not to reapply. Their terms were ending. I had
And-
two that was actually serving a remainder of a term, which was shorter.
Okay.
And so, yes.
Okay. And you guys were previously reviewing the personnel policy handbook last you met in March. Okay.
last
Thank
year. So this is essentially your kind of final, any other comments? It's, as I said, we're at the very end of this process.
And it's, well, actually, it's almost a brand new draft than what they reviewed last year.
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what we're looking at. So, because there had been a city policy, then there was like a whole new draft, and then we were giving comments to the new draft, and then we were going to default to the old draft while we were working on a new draft. And now I'm wondering, so what, and you said some of the changes that we talked about are in here. So which, like, what
Madam
draft is
Chair,
this now?
Madam Chair,
Oh,
members
God,
of the
attorney.
board. So the process began, I'm Robert Eschenfelder, by the way, I'm your lawyer. The process began when the commission asked me to provide to the city a complete rewrite of the policies. Our firm took over as city attorney, I don't know, about 2 years ago, and part of my specialty is labor and employment law. And when I looked at the current policy, it's not very good in my opinion. And so I produced to the city sort of a brand new document with a different organizational look, covering a lot more different things. My understanding from talking to city staff and the prior manager is that people in the organization didn't like it. Change is hard, and they didn't want to change that much. And so I'm just a lawyer. And so it was decided by administration, not this administrator, but the prior, to basically set aside what I had worked on and what some of you, at least who were there at the time, had worked hard on, putting comments and questions. And so instead, the city decided to go back to its current document and attempt to make adjustments. At that point, I really haven't been overwhelmingly involved in it. I've gone through this. It has not received my review or blessing. There are a few things in here. One thing that's unconstitutional under the First Amendment, but it's I can't force the administration to work, with me before coming to you all. And so I'm here today as your lawyer to answer any questions that you may have. But this is a document that's the administration's bringing forward. And so it's, if you've read it, you can pose questions to management, and if you have legal questions, I'm happy to answer them. But that just to sort of explain why you saw this circle of documents from old to new to old again. That's kind of the history of it.
Can I ask a question? Is your document that you worked on available to us to review, or the?
It's a
prior?
public record. I
It's
think the
public record.
administration doesn't want to use it, but I'm
I personally
sure
would like to understand what
asked
the
for it,
the
yeah.
differences were.
I'm happy to send that out to
Sure.
you.
I have a question or two, actually. One is that when you're appointed, that there are terms. Who has what term?
I don't have that in front of me, but I can send that out to you all.
It was decided as we were appointed.
Well, actually, the terms, they start out staggered, and
Yeah.
we can't change a term.
Right.
If a member resigns, another one is appointed to complete that term. So you'll have a couple that expires each year.
Yeah.
And then when we were appointing the new ones, it had the terms on there, and we contacted you all and let you know what your terms were expiring, but we'll send you out a roster for everybody.
And what was this? My second question.
But you have to remember, though, even if you got a roster, you're not allowed to discuss your business with another one. So not to violate the sunshine law. You have to be in an open meeting in order to talk to one another about it.
And the other question I have is, will the attorney be available to the committee just to go over basic state law procedure. It seems in the past that we've ended up in a real quandary about state law and how that affects the Civil Service Commission, and then also what authorities the Civil Service Commission has with regard to conducting its business. So that I would like to definitely get into so we know more where we're headed. In the past, we've encountered issues that we made great effort to take on, but somehow were overruled or just denied or not acted upon in any way. So if we knew where we stood going forward, that would be a very helpful thing. And I think the attorney could clue us in easily. So I'd look forward to having, us work with the attorney and as we go through our manual. And I guess that's what's suggested anyway. So here we are.
Yes. Rob, thank you for that explanation. I just want to make sure I'm following. There was the original handbook that was relatively short. There was the one that you put together and submitted to us. And that's what you gave us as part of the March 3rd, this
That's
document.
what you had in front of you
And
last
it
time.
says draft. So this is the one that the attorney prepared for us. But if I'm understanding, a group got together and took the shorter version and made some changes. And that's what the city has been operating under. But this committee has not seen that.
Well, no, it's the city made changes to the current draft, and that is what is in your current packet. They're wanting to get your feedback or whatnot on all of the edits that they have made. The commission hasn't approved that as the new city personnel manual. So the one that currently exists still exists, and that's the one that they're operating under. It's just that you're looking at the administration's version of its edits versus what I had proposed. That's where you're at.
This is the administration's version.
Correct.
The one that's stated May 18th.
This,
Yeah, the one that's listed in the agenda as draft is the one that you should have received in your packet.
Yeah.
That was edited by city staff, and you can correct me because I was not here.
Oh.
That was edited by city staff at some point in 2021. Or maybe even prior to that. But apparently, Rob, you have a different version? Or is this part of it?
I know you're coming new to this. I assumed your HR director would have apprised you of the history to this point, but everyone can skin cats differently, but when I looked at it, I thought that the organizational structure was poor. And so because I've done lots of these 4 other jurisdictions in the past, it was easier to me to just set this aside, start with a different model, but then customize it to the size of the city and so forth. And I think, again, this is before you got here, when the administration looked at it and, certain employees who've been here for a long time looked at it, it was just kind of too much cultural change, I think. And so the decision was made ultimately with the support of the then city manager to take my work product, put it aside, and rather just to tweak what the current city's policy is. I had one meeting with the city manager and the HR director in the conference room, I want to say 5 or 6 months ago, and provided some input on the then draft. And I haven't seen any new draft since or had any communication since from administration until this meeting. So.
May I just ask a question about our packet? So thank you for this. So it looks like there's a section 3 and a section 4. Is section 3 the plan that's currently in place, and then the section 4 the plan with the changes that are proposed? Okay, so the one, okay. So then the one in section 4 then is what we are going to be looking at.
I think
For
the
the change.
the edited policy that they're wanting you to look at begins on page 13 of 104 of your
Okay.
package.
If it's in that,
helps.
hopefully it's in
4.
that order.
And then the changes that are in here, are these ones that we had submitted before, or are these ones from the city staff?
Combination of both. At least that's what was communicated to me by my predecessor.
Okay, so what you had explained was this in section 4 is what we're supposed to give our attention to and provide the edits and the feedback for. And this is the one that we're moving forward with, this plan.
Now, also, there was a couple changes by me, which was that the city charters sections were quoted in there in both, which was not correct. And there were some important words that was left out, and you'll see those in that. And also corrected one of the sections. The numbering was not correct.
May I ask how, or who is responsible for setting our meetings?
Well, if you read that we put in the packet, the code part, the city manager gets with the chairman and you're gonna set your calendar today.
Yes, ma'am.
But when he needs to call a meeting or whatever, he'll work through the chairman on that and all, and then make sure that we can attend. And then we'll put it out to everybody like we always do, and everybody lets us know if you can make it on certain days or whatever, but that will come through him. Now, as far as the city charter, I'm your ex officio secretary. And so he'll coordinate, we'll all work together on that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And so what we have in front of us, this thick packet with the cover letter, really, this is no longer a valid work product. We're to focus on section 4. Is that
What you
correct?
have in your agenda packet today is the minutes that you just
Mhm.
approved.
Mhm.
You have the current city HR policy that everybody's that we follow because we have to. We can't follow anything else other than our current one. And then the draft that the city attorney and the city manager spoke about. This is a different draft that you worked through the last time. So we're trying to put a schedule together, and let's start working through this draft. And of course, the city attorney will be involved in all, and city manager. You
I'm sorry to
understand?
be dense, but is it tab 4 that we're to be looking at?
But the same draft is in that book.
Yeah, that's the confusion. So that both of these are the same. If, please, let
It
me-
is the same.
This and this are the
Yeah,
same.
my executive assistant just wanted you to have a notebook where you can put things in and bring, and instead
you
of just
do-
loose papers.
So-
And that's the reason we put the holes in them.
And we do not have a copy of what was worked on the last time the committee was together.
Those are not in there because it was
that's not-
a draft that had taken its place. That was given to us to put for the
I
packet.
think that's the confusion. These
Right.
both in the packet and the notebook are the same. It was just given as two forms.
Yes.
And we do not have the prior works, but the gentleman said that it could be
Yeah,
provided
and
to us.
my executive assistant had explained in an email that she was putting you a notebook together and have you something together.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Any
I just-
questions? 'Cause
Sorry,
It's
I'm
still, it's still
unclear.
confusing.
That we will be provided that. I will send that out to you, the one before.
Yes, ma'am. Personally, I would like to understand what the recommendations were made and if they were carried into this current draft and whether,
Right,
because if
agree.
there are deficits, then we probably want to incorporate those.
Well, I think part of the reason, again, this is my understanding from people telling me that they wanted to use the current one is because it was objected to because it was quote unquote too long. And, I'm the kind of person that I don't think you judge something on how long or short it is versus are you completely covering things that not only commonly occur, but could occur, and I've been doing labor and employment law in the public sector since 1996. when I was 10 years old. So, you know, I've seen different things come up and know what can happen on a variety of issues. And so admittedly, what I had produced last year is longer than what you have because it's more comprehensive. And so I think the city administration's pushback was, you know, this is too long, it's too complex, it's too different. We're not used to it. This won't happen anyway, kind of thing. And whatever, that's a valid position to take. I'm just a lawyer. I just give advice. But when you talk about, you know, if the vision is that you're going to get mine and see stuff that you like and put it back in, I think that's going to ruin the administration's desire not to have a long document, which is part of why mine was set aside.
I have no objection to the length of any documents. I'll say that up front.
Excellent.
As
And-
long, I think they need to be the right and the most accurate, the most effective, not necessarily the most efficient if it's a 100-page document, but that's kind of in the eye of the reader, but it does need to be as complete and accurate. So I'm not concerned whether it's 10 pages or 100 pages. It's a document that I will be responsible to ensure that it's carried out. So
And
just,
in fairness to the new manager, we have not even had that time to meet yet, you know, so everything that occurred under the prior manager. And so, you know, if and when he'll have time to chat with me, you know, we can see where we're at on the current draft that you have, but that's the history of it.
Good to
Right.
know.
So we're
And-
gonna work through the one, I'm gonna send out the others, and we're gonna work through the other. And I think the other draft mentioned another county and didn't, you know, Madeira Beach, there was still some things in there from a county and some things didn't apply that was outside the legal realm. But anyway, from what the HR director was saying, it was everything was a little bit of both is included in the one you have now. And as you're working through it, you know, the changes can be brought forward and put into the record.
And I guess the tab 4 reflects 61 pages of 104. And this one has all 104 pages.
It's the same thing. You got the current and you have the draft that you're gonna be working on that's in the book.
Is there a reason why tab 4 doesn't have all 104 pages?
Well, if you're looking at the agenda thing, that's 104 pages.
no.
That's not just their recommended draft.
Oh.
That's your minutes and that's at the end of it
Right.
is the current policy. So that's why I said, I think their draft begins at page 13 of 104 and ends, and it ends at page 61 of 104.
Okay,
So it's 13 of 104 to 61 of 104 is their new draft.
And 104, I think, constitutes everything in this packet, right?
Yeah, they just bait stamp that, you know, the computer sticks a number from one to whatever for the whole agenda. That's how that happens.
Yeah, the draft document is 49 pages long. Because you said 13 too.
And what's the current revision that's being used? 2019?
Yeah, it's the one that's dated, it says 2019 personnel policies and procedures. It has a date of August 13th, 2019.
Yeah, so the current one is I think page 62 of 104 to the end.
okay.
And what's the frequency with which revisions on this document are made? Does anybody know? Oh. Oh, do you know, like 2019? Okay.
We're operating under the 2019. We are not allowed to go to another
Yes,
one
it's-
operating under the one. We have to do the one that the Board of Commissioners actually adopt. Now, the one that you're going to be reviewing now, you'll work on those, the city attorney, the city manager, the HR director, along with you all. And then you'll finally come up with a new draft that will be presented to the Board of Commissioners at a workshop. They too will take it and workshop it, and it could be a couple of workshops. There may be a special session where they go through it. And then it'll be brought forward to, and of course, in the city charter, it says that before it's taken for adoption, the city manager has to concur with it. Okay? So he's the
Historically,
last agreed party.
and historically, do we have a record of how many times prior,
Well, I think, I think if you look at the current one, which is at the, near the end of that 104 thing, if you look at each of the policies individually, you'll see that there's annotations at the end of some of them that where it says, you know, revised by a resolution in 2007, revised by an ordinance. So I think just over time, as particular things got edited, that's how the city did it. So you can get a bit of a flavor
Thank you.
for the whole, I think you all as a commission at any time can look at any or all of it and make recommendations to the manager. But in terms of this kind of a comprehensive, you know,
Overhaul.
front to back, I think it's been quite a long time. That's why the current policy is very piecemeal. You see something happened in 07, something happened in 1995, you know, it just kind of depends.
Right.
So
and
to
when
give you my perspective, I would suggest that a comprehensive review occur, and it'll be, I mean, up to you really, but my suggestion would be no more than 4 years. Realistically, every 3 years, to do a comprehensive review to see, modify and amend. Of course, if something happens every year, there could be a legislative change that may impact the document. So then we would obviously bring that and reconvene all of you to make those changes. But a comprehensive, really every policy should have a date that it would, or to be reviewed by, and something like this realistically every 3 or 4, I'd probably say every 3 years, but it's a lot of work. But every 3 years. How often do we review our city charter?
It's about every 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they just did that about 3 years ago.
Right.
And of course, the Board of Commissioners can also suggest changes to that,
Right.
in which we have charter amendments on this coming ballot for March 15th.
But typically cities, something like this would be I mean, a time period of anything from 3 to 7 years. I asked about the charter because that's your kind of your supreme law for your city. And typically cities may review that anywhere usually between 5 and 10 years. And those are kind of required under city charters when you must review the charter comprehensively, and you convene a group to do that comprising, you know, residents, some staff, some of the elected officials. So, but for the purposes here, I think every 3 years would be fine. I mean, I'm fine with that, or whatever the commission chooses.
And also, when you meet quarterly, I think it says in there in the charter, one of your criterias are you're looking to see, because you're going to monitor it to make sure that the new policy, once it gets adopted, is working. You know, and they'll relay any problems that they're having or whatever. But you'll review that quarterly.
and is this the primary task of this commission, or whatever you call it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So there aren't other tasks. This is our primary
Yes,
focus.
and if
Well,
you
the
look
two,
at
the two main
charter
functions,
duties
the
and
two main
code.
functions are policy recommendation, which is kind of this project, and then the charter and the city code afford a role for you to play when employees file grievances, and so then you would be more in a quasi judicial role, if you will, and your decision still is a recommendation to the manager who has the ultimate power, but you know, if they feel they were disciplined wrongly or whatnot, then you all hear that and you give your collective recommendation to the manager of if it should be upheld or overturned. Those are the two main functions that you perform.
Thank you.
Have we had any employee complaints since last March, since we last met? No? Good job.
None since December 20th.
If we did, we would have
Yeah, we would've-
found some members and put something together.
I just had one other question for the attorney. You mentioned that you thought there were provisions that were violative of the First Amendment, and I just wanted to know what provisions you thought those were.
I would prefer not to talk about that until I talk with the manager about it, because we're in a public meeting, and the last thing I want to do is provide a plaintiff lawyer an opportunity to sue the city.
Fair enough. Thank you.
My hope, again, logistically, I don't know why this meeting was called before manager and I had an opportunity to get together and sort of get on the same page, but realistically, the model should be that we're on the same page when we come to you, so that what you're being dished up is something that I have reviewed, and signed off on. And it's up to them to decide what they want to recommend to you in terms of process. And, but especially where there are legal implications, I want to make sure that management understands how you wrote this has this negative, be it a statute or a constitutional provision. So I understand what you're saying. I could talk to you offline and show you the provision after the meeting, but I just don't want to talk about that.
Right. And the main reason this meeting was called to order, because you're required to take your oath and pick your chair and your vice chair. We wanted to get it started and then just sort of give you a procedure, what they mentioned today. And then they can come together, and then when you start your work session, they'll have whatever information that they need for you to hear. So today was basically just doing your oath and setting your calendar and, appointing your chair and your vice chair.
Yeah, and under the code, that should have occurred in November, but I guess the clerk indicates that there was not a quorum to be able to
That's
do that.
correct.
Did 3 terms expire at once?
Yes.
Because under the code.
Well,
it
no, we
says
had one that resigned. They
quit,
were
yeah,
moved, they moved.
Yeah.
From, so we had that one, and there was 2.
that
that-
turned off.
That's correct.
Because under your code, it says that there'd be
Correct.
rotating terms, but no more than 2 people term shall end at any time
That's
to
correct.
prevent that, to make sure that there's at least a quorum. But if somebody quits,
Right.
the
We
city
had a
can't.
person,
Yeah.
he was on the planning commission and the civil service, and they sold her home and moved.
Is there are they offset? What are the terms, 2 years? And is there a way to offset it to protect us from 3 people leaving at the same time?
Oh, it's how
again?
it's set,
So it is staggered.
but you
6
can't
months?
stop somebody from resigning.
Yes,
Yes,
but is it 6 months staggered? So it's
it's
every-
by years. Just like there would be one it expires 1 year and maybe 2 the next year, and another one, 1 the following year. But if you should decide to resign, that just gives another opening. But what it's talking about is staggered for the normal terms is the staggered ones.
Yeah, I think the clerk can easily send you like a list of you all
That's
and
what I'm gonna
when
do.
each of your terms ends.
The nature of the question was, are we protected from 3 people leaving again? And I mean, I know you can't foresee somebody leaving, but
Oh,
is it?
yeah, it doesn't affect you at all. When we get openings, we just start soliciting applications. We put it out there that we have vacancies and just hope that we get applications. For some odd reason, well, it's normal that sometimes you do not get responses. Now, this morning, I received a board application for someone wanting to serve on this board when we should have an opening, but we open it up to everybody at the time that we do have vacancies. But it occurred at the time where we had 2 seats up, and that's the reason it was all 3. So it wouldn't affect you. It would just affect if you can meet or not, because if you do not have a quorum, then, you can't discuss your business.
By years right now. So I don't think it affects at this point. Because there's years between the 3 of us.
That's it.
Yeah, and in a lot of cities, the way you protect yourself from what happened is you have alternates, like usually if there's a 5-member board, you have 2 alternates kind of thing, but the city would have to change its code to.
In order for you all to have, the city charter doesn't provide for alternates. I mean, we could have an amendment that provides for alternates.
Maybe that would be a good idea
thing to do.
in hindsight, so
Well,
that we
it-
don't have a year
It
gap
is something
again.
that I think the new manager would be considering, because especially since y'all play a role in employee grievance appeals, you could get a scenario where that employee deserves a hearing, but because 2 of you termed off and 1 of you quit and moved to Ohio, they can't because there's no quorum, and so, and there could be months and months before a volunteer steps forward to do it. So after this discussion, I'm sure the manager will put that in his notebook of the many, many things he's gonna. he's gonna-
Got it.
It
So
just-
noted.
It just sounds as though we had a predicament and there was a year lapse and that's not ideal. So nothing happened, which is great, but to prevent it from being an issue, it sounds like there's a resolution which we should consider to prevent that from actually becoming an issue with the city.
Agreed.
And if I could also ask, if we are not meeting, that we receive some kind of a notification that, this, we're not getting together and here's the reason why. I felt like we went into a dark hole after
there's-
March and heard nothing. I
Correct.
made a
The-
few phone calls and, then, hate to say gave up, but.
To my knowledge, the former city manager was supposedly doing all of that. And we even put out an email a couple of times, but they set the city manager works with the civil service, the chair. Of course, the chair ended up resigning because he moved. And so, but anyway, hopefully it'll be better with this, with the members that we have and, nobody resigns and we don't encounter any type of problems. So what we want to do now is go forward on a positive foot, work together and work through this policy and come up with some good recommendations and,
Agreed.
A final question,
Agreed.
and I'm big into, preventing issues when you have something. So the question earlier was who sets the meeting? I know we're going to set a calendar going forward. But the question is when the meeting, in that instance, when there was a year term and, what is the chain of command, so to speak, if it's in the, you're saying
it is, it's in there. It
Okay.
says that the city manager
okay, we
contacts
find
the
you.
chair and they set a meeting and, well, they'll set out timeframes of meeting and we will, about when they want to. And then we'll send out to everybody at that time when we get that direction to see which of those days and times that you're able to meet.
Yes, ma'am. And then in the instance where we have not been contacted for several months, what do we do? Contact you?
The city
Yes,
manager.
but we will notify you.
Yes, sir. Just,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
say
it's
5
just
years, say
something-
I'm here in 5, 10 years down the road, what do I do in that instance
Call the
that they were, that they came across? What is the correct chain of command? And is it written in here? I will review
If you look
this.
at your packet, if you've got the page, the paginated one, page 11 of 104, this is section 2-127 of the city code, sub G, which is at the top of page 11, says members of the Civil Service Commission shall meet quarterly and when grievances are filed. Any other meetings will be at the behest of staff in collaboration with the chair of the Civil Service Board. And then it gives you the city manager shall coordinate with the Civil Service Commission chairperson and the Human Resources Coordinator to choose and set meeting dates and times before a meeting is noticed. The city manager and the chairperson of the commission shall coordinate and agree on all agenda items prior to the Civil Service Commission meetings. Human Resources staff or the city manager's designee shall serve as staff person for the Civil Service Commission, and then talks about my attendance. So, that basically
Thank you.
the code puts it, the manager conferring with your chair to figure it out.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
So I guess next steps. Rob, if I understood you correctly, you have not had the opportunity to review what is in our tab 4, the draft changes from the city staff and meet with the city manager. Is that right?
I haven't, but just to be clear, the city management has brought before you its draft. And so it is, city management has the right to ask you to start going through that today. And so that's up to the manager in terms of moving forward. I haven't reviewed it or blessed it. That doesn't mean you all can't start reviewing it.
You were reading my mind. Thank you. Does it make sense then, just to lay out next steps and dates?
The next task is calendar. And
Yes.
our task here probably, I've exhausted all of my questions on, I think I'm clear now on where we are and what we need to do. Is everybody else?
Yes, and also Our HR person is part-time and because they have a role and a part in when the meetings are scheduled and everything. So Sean will let you know his days he's here. He's only here certain days of the week. And so it would be helpful to hear from him and then you set your schedule and everything. And the city attorney can let you know his schedule. And the executive assistant to the city manager, Megan Powers, is here and she has his calendar. And so that way, whatever we leave with today will be pretty sound on and we'll put out reminders to you as, you know, when it gets closer to your meetings.
Okay, so it sounds like next up, set the calendar, and that's the last order of business to be completed. So,
And Sean, I think you were mentioned first as the linchpin, so do we start with you and first of all, to the committee, how long do we think we need to go through this? Is 2 weeks? 2 weeks? And then we reconvene in 2 weeks? I'm seeing some,
That's up to you. The requirement is a quarterly meeting. But that's, yeah, if you wanted to,
Work session now. I mean, you know, you can do it quarterly or you can do it more often. It's up to you all how you want to go through it.
I'm sorry.
I don't think I don't believe we have to really speed through this, like it's not urgent. They have it in 6 weeks or anything. I think it's more of a, a process and debate and putting things together. In fact, we could meet in a month or 2 months, and I don't think it would matter a whole lot unless the manager has better ideas.
well, but maybe to set it, if that's possible for the year, and again, doesn't have to be on a quarterly basis, but I mean, that's really up to all of you. I think the more set, it might be a little bit easier and to just continuity going forward if we just, again, did it either quarterly or.
Looking through the, the draft, we also would like to get the other information about to compare those, so it's not just this draft. So there are things that we'd like to compare.
and do we have this available to us in Word form? I'm a computer.
I don't have it in Word form, but I think that the HR director does. He sent it to us.
Yes, sir,
Both,
the
yeah.
draft to review and comment. For personally, that's how I review.
Yes.
And
it's-
also, are we allowed to, so meeting and discussing is one form of communicating? Are we allowed to share drafts or would we
No,
You
we'd
do
have
at
to bring
this
a
meeting.
printed?
When we're done with this, I'm going to, because we have new members, I'm going to do a quick records ethics sunshine for the new members that haven't been at, but you are not allowed to email amongst each other. You can go back and forth with staff people or with me, but not with each other.
And that makes sense. How do we, how did we provide this? Just print out the comments and bring it to the meeting? Is that the best method for this? Like if I want to edit it in Word, and that it looks as though that's what was done here.
Well, from my perspective, again, management's going to be having a large role as well, but from my perspective, I think it's always better. I hate when, and politicians do this a lot of times, they wait to the meeting so that they can make a big presentation of, but it's more helpful to staff and to your lawyer to share those comments with us in advance of the meeting, so that we can then go back and consider and have a response for you by the time the camera comes on,
Right.
So I think if any of you have, just as you did with my draft, those of you who were here, you already had a list of stuff that you had shared in advance that I was able to see and I was ready to respond to. So I think with this draft, it would be the same sort of thing. Any of you have edits, send it to, I don't know if it's the HR director or the manager, who's your liaison, or the clerk.
You would send it to me as your secretary to your board.
Okay,
And then she would forward it on to
Yes.
whoever.
in advance, we can send you our comments.
Yes.
Okay, fabulous. because that helps with the process. Because personally, I would like to review, I'd like to consider the prior draft and then, submit the comments and then we come together to discuss the comments.
Correct. And so we probably wouldn't want to hold a meeting right away.
No, ma'am.
That would give me time to get the comments, have time for you to go through them, give me the content, the comments, and I can get them to the city attorney and the city manager, and then they would have time to get it on their calendar and come to meet and discuss, and we come back to the meeting.
So I'd like to make a motion that we schedule it within the next quarter.
Are there days of the week that are bad or good for any of you?
Tuesdays and Thursdays are the best, only part-time, so.
Commissioners, are there Tuesdays and Thursdays good, bad, or indifferent for any of you?
Tuesdays and Thursdays are great for me through the spring.
Okay.
And some of the my fall calendar.
One suggestion is choose 3 dates going forward in this year that don't necessarily have to be
Right.
every third Tuesday of the month. I mean, if you choose those 3 dates that work for all of us, I think that's another option. That way, if you know your calendar, it makes it a little easier, but just a suggestion also.
Personally, my schedule is difficult to predict ahead of time. I do a lot of field work, including out of state. So I am at the beck and call of my clients 2 weeks ahead of time. So I can do my best to predict what I'll be working on that month. So I'm guessing hopefully it'd be suitable that we select a date or thereabouts and coordinate schedules and hopefully just resolve it that way.
And even if you're out of town, if you're able to get on the phone,
Okay,
at least
it can be remote.
you can appear.
Oh, I do that, fine, then that'll work well for me. So then that makes it a lot easier for me.
So are we looking at March or April for the first meeting? What were you thinking when you said?
Yeah, March or April would be nice. I mean, give us an opportunity to, I'd say April. I like April. Yeah, yeah.
Right, so maybe.
What about April 5th, Tuesday? April 12th, Tuesday.
That works for me.
Good for me.
Good for me.
Mr. Lilly, how about that? April 12th, good for you? Manager
works.
schedule? Oh, wow,
That
everybody's,
works.
okay.
I have it.
Tuesday, April 12th.
She's back
And the ladies' time schedule, 10:30 be all right, or
10:30,
we can do it a half hour later?
April the 12th at 10:30.
Ten 30.
10:30. Great. Bob, I know you said you wanted to do a quick overview of the sunshine laws and
Okay,
responsibilities.
you're just going to pick the one date, or I think the manager said he wanted you to
Should-
try to pick some additional dates.
And if not, you could do it in April, at the April meeting, but yeah, it would be a little easier if we could choose it, but we don't have to.
Personally, I'm thinking that we probably will have done a lot. I mean, so are we limited on time for those meetings or an hour to 2 hours?
I think it's 56 minutes that you're limited to.
Okay, so I might
Oh, I'm kidding.
recommend.
I mean, I'm just
Oh.
looking
Oh,
at
no,
it.
yeah.
You can
It's
go 5
10:56,
hours
so-
if you want to.
Yeah, it can be as long as
I-
you need it to be.
I personally would prefer and I wonder if
Make
how
the-
everyone else feels that we keep them to like 2-hour increments maximum
sure.
during the workday. Would be very beneficial to my schedule, not to be selfish, But if it would be possible, I mean, I think we're going to have done a lot of work at that time to maybe schedule another one within 1 to 2 months after that, or how do we? Because, it sounds like there'll be a lot of conversation at that next meeting after having reviewed a lot of information. What do you think, Paul? Having, and everybody who's gone through this before?
Yeah, I can't, I think after 2 hours, it would get very old and you'd be
Yeah.
much better
Mhm.
going to another meeting and being
Yes, sir.
fresher. So I would agree to that 2 hour
Wh-
limit.
When would you think the next meeting should be set after the,
Um,
another 2 months, another 3, 2 months?
July, June or July.
Will there be
Right,
air
how about
conditioning in this
Tuesday, June
building?
7th?
Tuesday, June 7th? I'm certain I don't have anything that far out, so.
June 7th. It's 10:30 again, or
Wait, let's make sure everyone's free. Mr. Lilly, you
Okay.
I'm
free? Is
I'm
Manager
free.
free? Manager's free.
Mhm.
Tuesday, June 7th?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Um,
Here's
The
your second.
teacher has the, she has the most scheduled, the. It's your daughter's birthday that day? We could switch it. I don't
So
want,
7's no good?
So maybe the 9th,
yeah, would the ninth
Thursday,
work
June
better?
9th.
The week after? Fine
What,
for
what
me.
date?
Good for me.
Thursday, the 2nd?
Mhm.
That's fine with me. Good with manager? Good with
fine.
manager. Mr. Lilly? Good with Mr. Lilly. All right, Thursday, the 2nd.
And we're free to adjust this schedule once, on the next meeting.
Yeah, I think the big thing here is the manager's schedule gets real packed real fast, so it's good for him to get these things set
Sometimes
out.
in.
Pretty
Okay.
flexible.
And understood. So what had we said, the second at 10?
Mhm.
The 10, 10:30?
10 a.m. Thursday, June the 2nd.
10:30 on April the 12th. Okay.
And should we pick another 2-month increment? And so we'll have 3 scheduled? Does that sound? It sounds a little bit more aggressive than you usually do, but it sounds as though we're after a bigger task than
Yeah.
usual. So 2 months afterwards.
Good.
We can always readjust, but at least we'll have booked your time in advance. So we're into August. So we say the 4th? Sure, no problem with that. Everybody?
So which date?
Good. The 16th,
We said
okay, August 16th.
Okay, that's good for me.
August the 16th,
Mhm.
Time?
10 o'clock again.
Mhm.
Is that,
10 a.m.
we'll just want to be certain people don't mix up 10 and 10:30, but.
Good.
Okay. Commission. And I'd recommend that maybe that is as far out as we plan at this point.
Great.
Does that sound reasonable?
Good job.
Sounds good. You want to do another 2, we could do another 2 months out from there, and then worst case, we cancel, right? Is that the?
Well, under the code, you're supposed to do your annual meeting and select your officers in November, so you might want to just pick a
Okay.
November date.
So 2 months out from.
November.
November.
You have Thanksgiving week that you probably prefer to they, actually, the city may be closed, right? And I don't
But
want,
we don't
do
we should
meetings
not
that
be,
week.
No meetings that week.
no meetings,
And we're
Turkey.
closed Friday, November the 11th, and then
Shoot,
Thursday, the 24th, Friday, the 25th of November.
Can we say that again? In November, what's in November?
It's
There's,
The annual.
That's your
meeting.
annual meeting where you pick your chair and your vice chair. and you set
Okay.
your meetings.
so should we do November the 17th is a Thursday? Although,
Good, good for
Yes,
me.
It's fine. Thursday, November 17th at 10 a.m. also?
yes, sir.
10 a.m.
That's the only one where I can't.
Far enough in advance, we could, the commission
we
could
can.
reschedule if it need to. We'll have a better.
And is it, as long as we have 3 to have a quorum, you're allowed to hold the, although it'd be ideal to have all members.
You can, you
Hmm.
can appear remotely. I mean, obviously the
Didn't know.
preference is you're here live, but yeah, that you can appear remotely.
You could teach about policies.
It's a civics class.
Yeah.
I don't know. The city attorney said no.
Do you?
Oh,
Oh, wow. That makes sense. And is that, do we have, is that suffice for the calendar setting? And
Yes.
yes.
Any other orders of business that we need to address? Yes.
Yes.
Everything 10 a.m. except for 10:30 for the next one.
For the next meeting in April.
Are there,
Am I to understand that the attorney's going to discuss today a few issues about ethics and communication?
As soon as y'all are done with,
Today?
yeah,
Okay,
I'll
'cause
just
we're-
give you.
I think we're finished our business.
so do we have
So
to
far.
call the meeting to a close? Is that the?
Oh, I guess
You
by
could
motion.
call, who's your chair? Now, the chairman will adjourn the meeting.
Well, you can't adjourn your meeting and talk amongst yourselves. So that's
Correct.
a violation of the sunshine. So don't adjourn your meeting. Just,
Okay.
if we're done with that, we'll talk briefly about, about records ethics and sunshine. We'll start with sunshine law. So the sunshine law, and again, those of you who've been on, sorry for the repetitiveness, but it exists so as to make sure that citizens can see the operation of its government in action, and the statute, which is 286.011 Florida statutes, provides that any communication between 2 or more members of a governing board or an advisory body that has decision-making powers like you all have to only discuss matters that will or may reasonably come before you at a duly noticed public meeting. And so, for instance, if 2 of you meet each other at Publix in aisle 12 and, push your carts, and one of you says, I really think we should, look at changing blah, blah policy, or I heard that the city fired this person and I don't think that's right, or whatever. You shouldn't do that, because those are things that either will be coming before you or arguably, realistically could be coming before you. And so instead, save those things. In terms of communication deals with things not just face-to-face verbal, but also deals with phone calls, emails, text messaging. And with emails, I think the big thing that you want to make sure that you don't get trapped into is the clerk will a lot of times, like when she puts out your meeting notices or calls for, meeting, everyone's copied on that. And so sometimes I've seen it where member A responds to that and responds in some substantive way, like, oh, I see this on the agenda, blah, blah, blah. And then member B jumps in and responds. And while you may be arguing that you're responding to the clerk, you're now talking with each other, basically. And so that could be seen as a sunshine violation. So if you have something to say, if you get an email like that from the clerk about whatever, just email the clerk. Don't copy your colleagues.
Right.
Just if it's one-on-one, there's never going to be an issue there. The sunshine law, it's never going to be an issue with you guys because the staff affords you this beautiful meeting chambers, but just so that you understand, the law requires that you meet in a place that is accessible to the public and that does not discriminate against anybody based on race, sex, national origin. So you can't, for instance, schedule a special meeting at the He-Man Woman Haters Club. That probably wouldn't, be something that's compliant with sunshine. And so that's really the core of sunshine. If you just remember, don't talk to each other outside of a meeting, you'll be good. And it is frustrating for people in private sector. One of my other municipal clients, a gentleman came on the commission recently, and he's always done private sector. And he's like, I don't understand. Why can't I talk to this person? I always am able to talk to this person. But it's just you can't, because the public needs to know. It's to prevent backroom deals. And I know in this setting, backroom deals isn't a big deal, but nevertheless, the law applies. With respect to public records, you all just have to remember that you, in this role as an officer, basically, of the city of Madeira Beach, any record that you make or receive in the conduct of city business, including your roles here, is going to be defined as a public record. And so obviously things like your agenda that you got from the clerk, that's clearly a public record. But also remember, if you generate a text or an email to talk about this particular case that's coming before you, or the city's personnel procedures that you're going to be working through, that also is a public record. And so one thing in your role that could occur is, let's say a city employee identifies you all, and that city employee says, okay, I want or don't want this particular thing in our policy. So I'm going to text the chair or the vice chair, and I'm going to say, when you go to that meeting next month, you better do this or that. I'm an employee, you need to stand up for me. That's a public record. And so what do you do with that? I mean, you can't, I encourage you not to use your texting function to perform, government business, but you can't prevent somebody from sending you a text. And so the easiest thing to do there to cover you is to screenshot it or forward it to your clerk. That way it's captured by the city's email system. And so if anybody does a public records request, the city will be able to pick it up and you guys won't have to worry about it. If you don't do that though, understand that there's one Florida Court of Appeal opinion and one Florida Attorney General opinion that I found addressing the topic of, if an individual member of a board or commission doesn't ship that record over to the city administration or county administration, what happens is you become the agency, you yourself, under Chapter 119, which is the Florida Public Records Act, and you become personally responsible for preserving that record for as long as it needs to be preserved and producing it upon public records request. Because remember, we can't get to your personal text or your personal email account. That's your personal account. The city has no rights to contact Gmail or Verizon or whatever and say, hand me over those records. So that's your responsibility. And if you, let's say, fail to preserve that record, you're going to be sued in your own name. Now, the city may be able to provide you a legal defense, but it still is against you. And under the Public Records Act, it's a $500 fine for a violation the judge can give you. And if it's a knowing violation, it's a misdemeanor of the first or second degree, I believe. So it's potential serious business. And that's the same penalties for violating the sunshine, by the way. It's a $500 fine and a misdemeanor if it's a knowing violation. So if you do get an email or a text from anyone to talk about business, copy the clerk on that. If you really feel compelled as a commissioner to engage that citizen or that employee, you're able to do that, especially on the policy stuff. If it's an appeal that's going to be coming before you though, my recommended response to that employee or that employee's friend is, because I have to consider my vote on this appeal that's coming before me on what I hear that day at the hearing, it's not appropriate for me to engage with you to collect outside factual information that my other colleagues aren't also going to hear. So thank you very much. But I can't engage with you on. That's the best way to do. And again, forward that to your clerk so that she's able to capture that in the city's email system. In terms of ethics, there's probably not a lot of people that are going to come before you and lobby you on things. But it's important, I think, for you to understand that since you are civil service board members, you can theoretically have a role. The city manager may care what you all have to say about, let's say, selecting a vendor to handle the city's payroll system or whatnot. So if you ever are contacted by somebody who is doing business with the city or looking to do business with the city in the HR realm, if you will, of products, and they think, well, I'm going to get in good with the civil service board because then they're going to tell the manager that, who should be hired. Just steer clear of that. If you are contacted by anybody, again, just let the clerk know. Either I or management will contact that vendor and say, stay away from our civil service board members, leave them alone. But don't get involved in any of that kind of stuff because, that could become a conflict of interest. And the only other thing, ethics, that I would talk about is if you do ever have a case that comes before you, and this doesn't apply to policy development, but if you ever have an appeal that comes before you where you have a familial or a business relationship with the person, then you're going to want to have to recuse yourself. And certainly at the beginning of any of those types of hearings, I'll help you through the process, Madam Chair, and one of the things that we'll call for is, does anybody have a conflict, and you would declare what that conflict is, and then you would step down from voting. So that's your little mini course. At any time you have access to me, work through the clerk, and but if you have like a question of ethics, records, or sunshine that's like unique to you that you want to talk to me about, I'm here for you. Okay? Thank you much.
So welcome to the fishbowl. I'm just kidding.
I thought you were going to say Shark Tank.
Shark Tank. That's a good one.
So can I make a motion to adjourn? There you go.
Then I declare this meeting closed.
11:14 a.m.
Thank you all.
Thank you.